starting it. Oh, you were right. That's what 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to the Marketing Trench. On today's episode, Ricardo has died and gone. He's like, you know what I should do against my white background is I should wear a white hat.
It would be a great video.
Can we just take
Everybody's upping their video game. I'm just gonna whitewash myself.
So here's a great example of herd mentality at work.
So this is going well.
Scott showed up and he's like, hey guys, look at my camera. And we all did. And we're like, Amazon.com. This week we all look amazing. If you're listening to the podcast, you're really missing out because it's ridiculous how good we look.
Seriously, look at Scott. He's like in a professional studio.
I know. We all want to be Scott someday.
You really got to aim higher.
So this week we're going to talk about a subject that's actually a combination of two things. One, the headliner topic is give yourself a raise, and this actually came from an idea I had regarding Steve Ramsey's whole idea of paying off your debt. And every time you pay off your debt, you give yourself a raise, and what he means by that is the amount that you pay towards your debt now stays in your bank account. And when you think about how you pay off debt with post-tax dollars, right? And so the effective kind of gross income that you earn off of every time you pay off a debt is whatever the debt amount is times 1 point your marginal tax rate, which we'll just say is 18% for a lot of people. So 1.818, right? That's a lot of money. Like every time you pay off a debt, it's that number, marginal tax rate. That's like giving yourself a raise at work. And that's great, right? Because one of the big things that a number of us complain about is that we just don't have the money to afford things like good marketing, right? We can't pay for a virtual assistant because it's too expensive. We can't pay for really good quality photos or videos because it's too expensive. That's what we tell ourselves. So give yourself a raise. And then that idea married with a question that Scott and Ricardo used to ask when they would host live events, which is, hey, raise your hand if you're paying for a product or service that you haven't used in 6 months. Is that right? Something like that?
Yeah. Was that usually half the room, 3/4 of the room, Ricardo?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
I'm going to go home right now and cancel 3 of my subscriptions.
Right. Well, and it's like, why haven't you done that before? And that's what we're going to be exploring today, because what we really want to be able to do is give people permission to give themselves that raise. And we're going to dive into the subject of what causes people to continually pay for that service they haven't logged into for 6 months, to pay for that product, etc. So that's the topic today. And Scott wrote our copy framing up today's conversation. I thought he did a really great job. Scott, you're talking about killing FOMO vampires and outsourcing what you suck at. So let's start with the beginning of that. What's a FOMO vampire, and like what role do you think it plays in this conversation?
Well, what it plays is the entire industrial vendor complex that owns the real estate industry, and every time you go to an Inman or a NAR or some sort of real estate event,
and walk the exhibitor hall. Or they meet you. They're standing out there like in Vegas with the stripper with the flip card, and you look at them and they like try to sign you up for a free trial. And it's like there's all these cool tools and there's all of these cool systems and push button, and we're going to make all of your marketing easy. And it's almost like, oh, it's only $50 a month and it will do all of this for me. I don't want to miss out on that. What if it works, right? So you sign up for it, you get the 90-day free trial or whatever. You log in once, you realize that it's infinitely more complex than the salesperson at the exhibition hall said. You realize there's a million more things in the menu, and you're like, okay, well, I'll get back into this when I have time. And we don't. And it just sits there. And then and you're like, well, I got a 30-day, 90-day trial. I'll log back in and I'll check it out. And we don't. And these things creep up on us. I actually just did this I just did this last year, and I went through and I looked at, and it was personally and professionally. I mean, personally, I had subscriptions to things and like, audiobook subscriptions and stuff like that I just don't log into. And I just started canceling all of this stuff. But those FOMO vampires, man, they just suck you dry one drop at a time.
Yeah.
And every single month, when you start looking at your statement, there might be a couple $100 there, that are just slowly going off into the drainage ditches and not doing anything for you. And then what this also, where I also wanted to pivot into this was Ricardo and I were having a conversation over the last couple of days of, what do you spend your money on? What do you try to do yourself? What do you try to figure out yourself? And it's the whole thing that you just mentioned. Should I hire somebody to create this thumbnail for me, or this Facebook cover photo, or whatever it is,
or waste 3 hours of my life doing that myself?
Exactly. Or waste 3 hours of my life doing it myself. And that's probably the worst thing that you can do. So sometimes paying a couple $100 to have somebody do something so that you can focus on money making activities in your business is that's leveraging that small amount of money so that you can make exponentially more than that. So that's really where it came from. And like you mentioned on those lunch and learns, it was most of the group. Most of the time. And it was kind of funny. It was sort of a joke, but because we didn't charge anything for the classes we were doing, but that was kind of the first thing it was one of the first things that we would do. And then we would say, okay, cool. Cancel all of those. You just paid for your gas to get here to the class today, and you're going to make a bunch of money moving forward. And everybody laughs because it's true.
Yeah.
It's funny because it's true. Right.
So I started using an app called Truebill. I think it's called Truebill, and it looks up all of your current monthly subscriptions.
Oh.
So it tracks your monthly subscriptions, when the next payment is due, and then it says, do you want to get rid of or cancel any subscriptions? So I'm up to maybe 500 a month or so in recurring subscriptions for stuff that I can expense. But that number was higher. So for me, a lot of November, December, and even January was taking stock of and there are services that I was clinging on to because I told myself, I don't want to cancel because I don't want to lose out on what this provides me.
FOMO vampire.
FOMO vampire. And it was me telling myself, no, I'm going to get to it this week. I'm going to get to it this week. And then I wouldn't get to it. And then boom, you see the recurring charge again.
Yep.
So come January, I just pulled the trigger on like 3 or 4 services that I'm like, okay, this isn't a use to me right now because it's not a part of my daily or weekly flow. I just keep telling myself I'm going to use it and I'm not. And so Truebill was kind of useful for me in that regard, in terms of just kind of seeing the spotlight of everything. The other thing that I did is I signed up for a service. I hate spreadsheets. I absolutely abhor spreadsheets. Scott likes spreadsheets. Dustin likes spreadsheets. I use a service called Tiller Money HQ or Tiller HQ. What it does is it connects to all of your bank account and investment accounts and gives you it converts it all into a spreadsheet so that you can see where your money's going. So I have auto categorization rules for whenever I charge something on my card, it automatically budgets it into whatever type of expense it is. Is this something that I can get reimbursed for? Is this just an everyday like fun money expense? Or is this, what part of my budget is this from? So
and
now,
like, did you create the budget category for your BDSM stuff? Or?
That's awesome. No, but now I have like literally at a glance, I can see where everything is going every month, and every 2 weeks, I just take a look to make sure I'm on track.
Yeah.
And how much do you think you reduced your monthly expenses just by doing that audit? Like,
Oh.
obviously this stuff I didn't need.
Yeah, no. So to me, it's very revealing because I don't picture myself. I'm just gonna say it. I don't fancy myself the type of person that's like financially responsible. I'm just like, whatever, it's fine. But now I can see literally where everything is going, and I'm treating myself and everything I do like a business now. I can see I'm spending way too much over here. Maybe it's becoming a father now that I'm realizing time is probably the most valuable thing we have, and I prefer to spend it a certain way. And I'm okay hiring out and outsourcing certain functions so that I can have some of my time back. Or I also recognize during my day, me being on a call is worth anywhere from $100 to $250 for me. I can make that revenue on a call. Why would I waste my time working on my business or doing something that's menial and repetitive, although I have the technical know-how to do it? If my time could be worth $150 to $250, why wouldn't I outsource that task? Why wouldn't I hire a designer, pay him $100? Why wouldn't I hire a VA? Why wouldn't we hire a, post-production person to edit our podcast and stuff like that?
So let's dive into this example for a second, because I think that this example provides a really great opportunity for us to distinguish between things that are ultimately aspirational time vampires and things that actually solve a need that we have, right? So to your question of why wouldn't I just hire someone to do something that I can do if my time is spent at a $200 an hour job, it's because you might not have a $200 an hour opportunity at that moment, right? So like if you can get on a phone call and make $200, you should do it. But if you don't have that $200 phone call lined up, then maybe you should be working on your business because you don't have that $200 phone call lined up.
Right.
Which is also what I feel like a lot of these, Scott mentioned the sort of marketing industrial complex. I feel like that's what they prey on, right? They say, Dustin,
Perfect.
You could be making $200 an hour phone calls, but you're over here editing your silly little podcast. So why don't we take your podcast for $500 an hour and you go make your $200 phone call? And then what happens is I pay them $500 and I don't make a damn phone call. I have no phone calls to make, right? And so besides, I want to come up with some rules here for a second. So besides the rule of if you haven't logged into it in 6 months, probably you can get rid of it. Are there other rules that you guys apply to distinguish between time vampires and things that actually solve problems?
I do. For me, it can't do something that I'm not already doing. It has to assist, or it has to automate, or it has to in some way make what I'm already doing enhance. It has to make what I'm already doing better. You don't make critical systems and process decisions in an exhibition hall, right? So, because that's what they'll prey on. They'll say, you don't have these systems set up in your business. Well, if you don't have these systems, that tool's not going to do anything. Selling you hammers isn't going to make you a carpenter, right? It's just going to make you the owner of a hammer. So that's one of the rules that I have. The other one of the rules that I have is it can't put data on an island, right? It has to play well with everything else that I'm using. It has to be a part of an existing system, and it can't isolate any sort of data or feedback that I need for the rest of my business. Like, I don't want to have to log into that to get data points that I've collected in this place that I don't have access to in my CRM or any of the other critical reporting tools or anything like that I have. So those are really my biggest rule is a tool won't grow your business, right? So don't add anything don't add anything that requires that you need to change your behaviors in order for it to work. Your behaviors, your systems, your processes, you won't do it. So, use the hell out of what you've got, push it as far as you can, jimmy it as far as you can, zap it together as long as you can until you find a solution. And that's when you start looking for solutions. Solutions should be proactive because you've identified a problem. They shouldn't be revelatory because you walked by their table at the exhibition hall and they revealed the answer to all of your problems, right? And it sounds silly, but for us, for marketers, if especially people, entrepreneurs like us, man, exhibition halls are like, you're like a kid in a candy store. You're like, it all looks so good, right? And it all solves so many problems, even problems I didn't know that I had yet. It's like, it's really, really hard. It's hard to not do that, but exhibition hall.
Let me kind of weigh in on that, because I'm totally resonating with you hard right now, and the reason why is because I just spent a bunch of money on a camera when I already had a camera, and it worked fine. It didn't look as good as your camera.
That's awesome.
But I definitely was thinking to myself, Scott has the look I need to be a broadcaster, right? And one of the things we've been talking about on previous episodes is the need to create YouTube content. And one of the lies I've been telling myself is I can't create compelling YouTube content with my junky $100 webcam. And as soon as I saw, Scott, your camera, one of my justifications for buying this $1,000 camera, $1,200 lens, because I'm like, this is what I need before I can go become a YouTube broadcaster. And it's not true. Like, I knew it was not true, but it felt really good. It felt really good
to say it was true.
Yeah, and look, it feels really good for me to see myself in this screen, But it's like I'm not a carpenter. I'm just a guy who now owns a more expensive hammer.
I would argue that because we do this every week, and because you're already practicing and you are creating video every week, it may have been a bit of it may have been a little bit of camera envy. And yes, maybe you could have done it on a more grainy video, but also, quite frankly, aren't you more excited to create content now?
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I am.
So it's not like you're like, if I get a camera, I'm going to be so ready to record my first video. That I would say, okay, maybe think about that. But we do stuff on camera. We do this podcast every week, and, we're talking to each other, and because that's what happened to me as well. I have to fully admit here, I have to create more video content as well. But the reason I wasn't creating the video content is because I hated the way that it looked. I couldn't get the background right. I couldn't get the lighting right. I couldn't get the video right. It always looked grainy to me, and it just didn't feel right.
Now you're in a professional studio.
But I've had this for a week now, and I haven't created any new content. So it's good. We're here on this accountability, but you know what? I'm excited to do it. I'm still,
So we'll need to circle back around to this, right? Because if we come back, and this is how it happens. This is why I brought it up. This is how it happens, right?
Yep.
We go spend the money, and then 6 months from now, we're like, now I'm over my camera because the shiny thing is done, and I still haven't created content, right? So you got to let it. If you have spent the money, you got to let it push you. And I think for me, so one of the other things. Oh my gosh. Guys, I'm a hypocrite. I'm a massive hypocrite. So, I signed up for Musician because I wanted to learn to play, and I bought a guitar because I wanted to learn to play the guitar. I thought, I got a almost 2-year-old son. He's very into musical instruments. I don't know how to play a lick of music. I can sing. Not going to do it here. But I want him to grow up in a house with music. So what I did was I aspirationally bought a guitar, and I aspirationally paid like $150 for Musician to teach me how to play the guitar. And I did it faithfully for 2 weeks, and then it got hard. And you know the rest. So So I've already paid for an annual subscription. So but you know, this is the middle ground that I feel like a lot of us find ourselves in. And I don't know, like, how do I work through this here a little bit? Like, do I keep pushing myself to play the guitar? I think I should, but I also feel like, it's a grind, but that's how hard things are. Like, and you know, one of the owners of the company, he likes to say, easy work, hard life, hard work, easy life. And so am I setting myself up for some easy work by not playing the guitar? But then, you know, life's hard because I suck and I can't play a musical instrument. I don't know. I got all these things in my head. Help me, boys. I need therapy.
No, I mean, you did just describe what it is, and you kind of described what we're talking about. I guess the fact that you're having this conversation and the fact that we're having this conversation makes it top of mind. We're not going to cure anybody's, you know, buying impulses or you know, what do we call them? Shiny objects. You know, and quite frankly, it's okay to have an R&D budget. It's okay to explore new things and try new things and see if you like it. And I think that's an important part of growing your business. So, you know, with the guitar thing, you know, if you're the only one playing the guitar in the house, it's probably going to be hard to be motivated. But if you were trying to learn guitar while at the same time teaching your 2-year-old how to play guitar, that might give you some more motivation. It might give you some more accountability, especially if he's into it and he's bugging you all the time. Daddy, let's play the banjo or whatever. This movie Deliverance, it had an awesome song in it. I want to learn how to play it.
I literally hired an accountability coach in December.
What?
I paid $1,200 to hire an accountability coach. And I know what my monthly,
right here, 6.
It's I write a weekly check-in email. What did I get done this week? What am I gonna get done next week? And what am I? Is there anything else on my mind that I'm stuck on and that I want to talk about? And then I pretty much put a recurring to-do list to record and edit a podcast every week. Record a training video for my sales staff every week, and then write and ship a newsletter every week. If I can do those 3 things consistently without fail, and so now it's just become a game of keeping the streak alive. And I haven't missed one yet. What I'm noticing is with every week that goes by, it's just the stuff is getting easier and easier to do.
Yeah.
And then now I'm learning that, you know, if I just use a different software, I can, if I'm going to record video, I need to sit down and batch record it or hire somebody to edit it for me afterwards. Because if I don't record it and edit it once I'm done, it's going to be hard for me mentally to get back to it and do all of the post-production work for it. So now it's the assessment. Is it worth it for me to pay somebody $300 and I think like $80 a month to handle all the post-production? To me, the answer is yes, because it means I can just focus on ripping through content.
Yeah.
And then it's the same with the podcast. I have a bunch of video content that I've done nothing with. I want somebody to go through, look at my timestamps on the audio, and create 60-second video clips out of those sort of like note sections of the podcast. So, but what I've learned is, you know, having the accountability coach is keeping me on pace or on track, because I can imagine making a million excuses as to why I don't want to get to it this week or why I don't want to get to it that week. I feel guilty not checking in.
You said $1,200 a year.
Mm-hmm.
So $100 a month. You probably saved more than that by going through and killing FOMO vampires, right? In your daily budget. So you probably cleared more than that up. Accountability coach to me sounds like a good investment, because you already recognize what your highest and best use is. Where your talents lie is creating the content, having conversations. Just because you can do post-production work doesn't mean you should be doing it. And so I think that's an important part, because the money you were spending on stuff you weren't using wasn't killing you. It wasn't hurting you. So what you did is you reinvested it, and you just redirected that into something because quite frankly, you identified that you have a weakness, and your weakness is you're a lazy bastard. So you hired somebody. So you hired somebody to call you and say, get to work.
That's amazing.
But
that's amazing.
Dude,
it's kind of true, though.
I might want the number to your accountability coach. I think I suffer from the same affliction.
I don't want the number to your accountability coach because I suffer from the same affliction.
That's awesome.
So yeah, I mean, that's a perfect example of going back and analyzing all of your expenses, determine where you're putting money that you don't really need to put it on there again. If you haven't logged onto it, or you haven't even thought about it in 6 months, just cancel it. Doesn't matter what it is. Doesn't matter if it's going to revolutionize your business 3 years from now. You haven't logged into it in 6 months. Cancel it. If you run into it again somewhere down the road and you realize that you need it, then you can reinvest.
I remember one product was guilting me so well because it had a big notice that said, if you're on one of our founding member plans, if you cancel, you're going to pay full price when you come back.
Yeah.
And that one guilted me pretty well.
Well, I've spent a fair amount of time in the info marketing space, and they are magicians at creating guilt. And some of those copywriters and some of those things are rooted very, very deep in basic psychology. Mm-hmm. And you know, there's a reason for FOMO. There's a psychology behind it, and they know how to push those buttons. They're really, really good marketers. And the one that gets me all the time is when I feel guilty, right? Like, hey, Scott, are you sure you want to cancel that? It's a freaking drip with a mail merge, right? It's got a field merge that my name went into it, and that damn email goes out to everybody. I'm not letting anybody down by canceling something, but they sure make you feel like it.
Yeah. So I think we've identified some. Good rules and examples of where it makes sense to start canceling things. So that's the give yourself a raise part. But now, Scott, in your promo copy, you had an and the and was really interesting. The and was, I'll do the whole thing. By killing FOMO vampires and outsourcing what you suck at. So you gave yourself a raise on the first half of that, and now you're telling us to spend the money? What to outsource? Well,
yeah, absolutely. Because Ricardo said this earlier, that time is the most valuable thing that you have. We all have money and we can spend the money in some places, but really the time is the thing that's the most important part. And I'd like to maybe talk about some outsourcing, some tools, depending on what stuff you're trying to do, but not doing it yourself. And again, as entrepreneurs, we get overcoming being a solopreneur is really how you build a business. And when you start thinking of your business as a business, you are not working in it, right? You're 10,000 feet. You're making sure everybody's doing what they need to do, and you're outsourcing, you're delegating, and that's where you can redirect that money to free up even more of your time. And quite frankly, you suck at graphics, hire somebody to do it for $10, right? You suck at video editing. You can kind of do it, but it looks like something from the 1980s. You're not a great copywriter, but you're pretty good at coming up with the ideas, but you just don't know how to say it perfectly. you could probably figure out Facebook marketing, but you could probably use those 6 months back in your life that it takes to figure it out to how to do it well. And just because you can do something doesn't mean that you do it well. And by hiring somebody to do it well, you can get a return on that investment faster. And that's kind of where that was coming from, because it is funny. We spend this money on all of these things, but then we won't spend money on things that we think that we can just figure out on our own. It's weird, but I know I have that affliction.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really interesting. I think I have a slightly different take on this, and that is you should at first do the work yourself. So graphic design, there's no reason you can't go to Vistaprint or Canva or something like that and throw together something that gets you to version 1, right? If you're in real estate, version 1 might look like using Canva to make letterhead, envelopes, business cards, right? Maybe a social media template, maybe a website. You might do that through something like Squarespace. Probably you'll just get a website through your brokerage for free. And then version 2 is, what are you actually handing out to people on the regular? Are you handing out your business cards to people and you want it to look a little better? Then maybe hire that graphic designer. That's the time you do it. Or Facebook advertising. That's a hard one, right? Because you don't want to just throw money into a blender, which is what you do if you're learning how Facebook ads work. But Scott, in your case, that's what you did. Like, you learned how, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think you learned how to do Facebook advertising well enough to get to the point that you started working with Noah, who really knows what he's doing with Facebook advertising. But like, you had a sense of it, right? Like, you were doing it first.
Scott's an anomaly, though. I would consider you an anomaly.
Worse. But I want to make a distinction, because that was actually a smart point, Dustin. One-off stuff.
Every once in a while it happens.
One-off stuff, I think, one-off stuff is not what we're talking about. We're kind of talking about the maybe the graphics for your social media posts, or the video content that you're creating every week or every month because you're committed.
The recurring stuff.
The recurring stuff, the stuff that, and I agree with you. I think it's important to understand what goes into it so that you don't get taken advantage of when you try to outsource it.
That's what I was going to say. The value in knowing how to maneuver through it yourself is knowing a reasonable expectation of what's involved in the process.
Yeah.
So that when you do get a quote for someone, it's like, well, no, that's stupid. I could do it myself in 30 minutes. I know it's not taking you 10 hours.
Yes.
Yeah. And it allows you to potentially hire somebody that maybe isn't let's just go back to the marketing, maybe not a full-blown agency to do something. If you're decent at editing your videos, I'll bet you could find a film student from a local community college that you can just point in the right direction, and they can do it better than you can for a fraction of the cost of somebody that has Joe's video editing shop. Hire, and they assume you know nothing. There's something interesting that happens with companies that make things seem far more complicated than they actually are. Right? Like building websites and things like that. Dustin, you and I were having this conversation. You see price tags on websites with commas in it, and you're just like, wow, you can still get that much for a website? Well, you can if the people don't know what they're doing, right? If they have no clue.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, so I think one thing that needs to be said here is, it's okay to do something badly at first.
Absolutely.
And I feel like that is one of the things that causes us to go out and spend all this money on recurring costs every single month for various services, because we're just petrified of doing something below the standard in our own head. And you got to learn. And I'm talking to myself. Hi, Dustin. It's okay.
Wow, that was a very affectionate look you gave yourself.
I'm a really great person.
Oh, that's amazing.
It's okay to do things not the greatest at first. Like it's okay to be messy at first. And this goes right to your earlier point, Scott, that you don't pay for things that don't solve a problem that you currently have. You don't pay for tools that don't do something that you're not already doing, which implies that you're already doing them, right? Doesn't imply, it explicitly states it. And so, I really loved your point that you shouldn't make decisions about the kind of marketer you're going to be or the kind of marketing you're going to do in an exhibition hall. Like you should have that mapped out in your head going in. And, look, if you're paying for all these products and services, I guess one of the things I feel like we should be really clear about here is that it's totally okay to scrap all of that stuff that you're not actually using and start from zero, because you might get to that point, right? Like maybe someday down the road, Ricardo will need that thing that he was in the Founders Club for. But when he does, it'll be worth it to him to pay that amount, or it won't be worth it and he won't pay it.
Yep. Or quite frankly, there may be a better version of it by the time you're ready to use it. There may be a competitor or something that comes out with something that fixes the problem that one didn't necessarily fix.
Mm-hmm.
Technology advances and iterates very quickly. And not so much anymore, but 7, 8, 9, 10 years ago, there was something new every week and it was gone 2 months later, or there was a better version of it 2 months later. So this is kind of a good time. I don't know if you have necessarily the new stuff that's coming out at rapid fire like it used to, which is good for us as marketers and business owners, because there's a pretty steady, like we pretty much have established what tools we need and what things we need to do.
Yeah. I mean, I'd say there's a lot of stabilization in the industry, but there's still disruption, right? Yeah. So back in 05, 06, when I was a part of a community of people who were really trying to get good at blogging, WordPress was just coming out, and it was a big deal because it's simple. It's, we were going from Blogger to WordPress, and WordPress felt way nicer. It had more widgets. It looked more professional, like a real website, quote unquote. And then 5 years ago, Squarespace was the big thing, because Squarespace had a more modern look, and it was even easier to edit. And it took a lot of, one of the problems I always had with WordPress was that some person would get in and hack the code that I couldn't see, and then I'd have random crap on my website and it get taken down for malware or something. And Squarespace was like, we'll take that off your hands. And now there are tools like Webflow, which make it even easier for someone to have a really high design aesthetic on their website without having to have a lot of sophisticated developers putting that design up on the internet. Right. And so this stuff progresses. There's still disruption. There's still, and going to your point, Scott, like by the time that you actually need the tool, you'll know what you're going for, and there might be something better out there.
Yeah. Yeah. So, let's talk about maybe, and Ricardo, you probably have the deepest knowledge on these types of tools, but let's talk about some types of tools that you can use for different things. Like, one of the things I think of is when I first learned about Design Pickle. That was pretty amazing to me.
Wait, what's this?
It's a monthly subscription, and you can do basically have a graphic designer full-time for the month, and unlimited revisions or however many designs for like $400, $300, $400 a month.
I think it's even less than that.
I think it is. I think it is less than that.
It's a couple $100 maybe, but if you're doing something that you need to, like if you have a regular social media schedule and you have a social media manager or something like that,
so
you want great graphics.
So I'll give you an example, and hope they're not listening. I don't submit design work to my corporate team because sometimes it takes 2 to 3 weeks to get it back. So what I do is I found a graphic designer on Fiverr.
Yep.
$40, and he designed cover art and interior pages for like a keynote deck that I put together. He did the cover art for my podcast. Anytime I need something, I just message him. I pay him 40. Last time I told him send me an invoice for $100, and then I tipped him another $100 because I draw chicken scratch on a napkin. He's able to take that chicken scratch and make it into something amazing without me requiring any revisions.
Wow.
That's gold. I'm sorry, but that is gold.
Yeah, Fiverr is amazing for that.
If you can find somebody that's able to take chicken scratch and convert it into a nice visual piece, like hang on to that. I tell Ashley, I joke, I keep trying to find excuses to hire him. He's so good.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And so, stuff like that, I think is valuable. You just have to look and then be able to give people direction. My experience with Fiverr is there's some bad ones in there, but if you're able to give detailed and very specific instructions, which I'm in the habit of doing now, you can find some pretty good stuff there.
And again, I said it before, I'm a big fan of going to the local community college, find marketing students, find film students, get these kids that need to build up a portfolio.
That's one thing I have sort of done, maybe not as much as you, but here's where my experience, for example, the quotes that I've received back, I know are overpriced. Because if I can do what's in your portfolio, and I'm not a designer, but if I could do what's in your portfolio, that's a problem.
Yeah.
But that's where I at least have the expertise or awareness to know that, okay, well, this quote's unreasonable and I'm getting taken advantage of.
Yeah. Yeah. And well, they might not still be in school. I mean, you may have somebody that like has a small business or they're trying to get started. It's not 100% every time. But it's a good idea if you think outside the box a little bit, help somebody who's not in the job market yet, but's trying to learn marketable skills and help them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Internship, that type of thing. You could get copywriters, you can get English majors to write stuff for you. There's a lot of different out of the box types of things that you can do that will free up a ton of your time and a ton of your energy.
I think
it helps you produce consistency in your output.
I think the biggest question where people get hung up on is, okay, I can go find someone, but now what do I pay them? There's a lot of, I don't know how much to pay them. I don't know what to pay them.
Well, I mean, that just comes from that comes from doing research. You're going to get a couple of quotes from people. I wouldn't go with the cheapest every time and talk to them and find out what their situation is. Probably my best experience with this. Well, I've actually had pretty good luck with getting people. That's kind of not fair. I'm batting 1,000, I think, with Noah and Renee.
That's funny.
But I found somebody who was a film student, and she was using her skills to record insurance depositions. Like no creativity, set up the camera, put together a mic, and tell me what happened kind of thing. And so she was really excited about the ability to use some of her creativity, right? To really kind of exercise that part of what she loved about learning how to use that equipment. And, you just talk to them and do interviews with them. I mean, the way I found her is I typed in, I think I typed in film student in LinkedIn. And I looked for people that I had connections with, and then I just started reaching out. Kind of weird, but it worked. I don't think it's an anomaly. I think it's possible.
It's definitely possible. I had a conversation this week with my company's bookkeeper, and she's looking for help. And so that's an example where the help actually, if the help screws up, it actually creates some real problems. So one of the things I referred her to was Upwork. And what I love about Upwork is that you can see a number of different things. One, you can see ratings from people who have worked with that person in the past. And my gosh, if I could see ratings on every escrow candidate I was interviewing, my life would be amazing, right? It's like, Because people in an interview setting can present themselves one way, and then you get them in the door, and they're not that way, right? I've hired a lot of people. I fired a lot of people.
Good interviewers.
Yeah, and so reviews are awesome, but also you can see their billing rate, which is great because it gives you a sense of maybe how confident they are in their own abilities. That's how I interpret billing rate. Like somebody, you always have your mean, right? And in the case of a job I was recently looking for, someone to do some cold calling, the average was about 25, 30 an hour. But then there were some people who had a lot, like very high ratings, a lot of ratings, and they were charging $200 an hour. And I thought, okay, that person's actually very attractive to me because I have made the mistake, especially when hiring developers. Oh, Jesus. That I don't hire the ones that charge enough, right? And then I find myself buried in this project for eternity, dealing with stupid small problems constantly. Yep. It makes sense to hire people who are good enough to charge a lot, because if they charge a lot and they have great ratings, it probably means they're highly, highly effective. And then the final thing Upwork shows you is how many hours they've actually billed toward whatever the thing is that you're paying them to do. So you can see like, hey, this person has billed 200 hours doing cold calling or something like that. And it's like, great. Like this isn't some newbie, like this person has some experience, right? And so, I think if you're going to hire out, I think looking for those kinds of social proofs or validations is really critical to the success. Again, especially if you're hiring somebody to do something you're familiar with and you can know pretty quickly what the real needs are.
So in those marketplaces are out there, and there is a ton of talent, and it's all over the world. So besides Upwork and Fiverr, Ricardo, do you have anything? Do you have any other types of services like that you like?
No, it's just I always look at portfolio. So when it comes to websites, it's easy to look up their portfolio. Mm-hmm. I just hired somebody. I forgot I'd hired somebody on Monday, I think, or over the weekend, to create a video intro bumper for my YouTube channel. Mm-hmm. It cost me $400 or $500. I don't remember. I want to say $499 or something. I spent forever looking at portfolios, and I finally found this guy, I think from Bolivia. I loved his process for storyboarding the animation before he creates it. And so I gave him a ton of example. I went through Dribble and I looked at a ton of logo animations and podcast video animations, things like that. And I gave him a list of examples of things I liked, things I didn't like, et cetera, et cetera. And so that probably took the longest, sifting through portfolio, and then trying to find inspiration for what I was looking for, because in this particular case, I have no idea what I'm looking for.
Okay.
Because it like my podcast cover art it's not like I have a flat logo like my West logo. It's this squared image with my picture in it, and I don't want to be the centerpiece of the animation, right?
And your clients don't want that either.
Right. No, really. Like, I don't want it to be about me. I want it to be about the listener that would be interested in listening to this thing.
So you mentioned Dribble. What is Dribble as a resource?
So Dribble is a marketplace where designers go and share their portfolio, and you can find all kinds of stuff on there.
I use Dribble to hire our Lighthouse escrow designer. He's out in USD, and he does a fantastic job.
Did we use Fiverr for our marketing trench logo?
We use 99 Designs.
99 Designs for that.
Who I also like. I was going to try to hire somebody to redesign my website, and then I just ended up paying, I think, close to $2,000 on a design contest on 99 Designs, and I got something like 10 submissions, and I narrowed it down to the design that I have now. So I paid I think $1,300 for the design contest, and then I paid $2,000 for the developer. But we use 99 Designs for our podcast cover art here, and then I use them for my website. I think that it's a good resource. But again, for me, it was spending time on spend time to look at portfolios to see if that person has the style that you're going for.
Yeah, no, I think that's really smart. I mean, you end up with a super professional product at the end. It took you probably a quarter of the time to do the research as it would have been for you to try to do it yourself, and it would have looked half as good, right? It would have taken twice as long, potentially. So, yeah, no, I hope this is a valuable conversation. It's there's a lot of cool resources out there, and should get all these in the show notes, the ones that we mentioned today. But there's a lot of resources for these kinds of things that allow you to focus on more important aspects of money making activities in your business and be able to produce a consistent, really professional image.
Yeah.
Or product or service.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, if you've been listening to this podcast and you're interested in hearing some of the other tools that we used in the past, or some of our ideas about, once you've actually paid someone to do some amazing marketing for you, and, you streamline your marketing process, and you want to say, okay, like, who should I be aiming my marketing at? What should I say to them? Check out our past episodes over at marketingtrench.fm. They're all there, along with show notes, so that you can quickly read and see if the episode makes sense for you to listen to. You can also listen to some of our sister podcasts over at the Real Disrupt Podcast Collaborative. There are shows there for marketers, shows there for lenders, shows there for real estate agents, and no shows there for escrow people.
There is now.
Nobody cares about us. You can go listen to those podcasts over at realdisrupt.com. And of course, check out our YouTube page, Marketing Trench. You'll find us on YouTube. Subscribe there. You can watch these broadcasts live. You can be notified if you click the bell there. You can be notified every time we go live, so you don't miss out on an episode, or watch the video so that you can see the stupid looks we give each other and how sexy we are with these new cameras. So check us out on YouTube. That's it. I'm done. We're done. Next week.
That's awesome.
Next week, really exciting topic. We're going to be talking about 3 things you can do right now with your database. So let's assume for a second that you actually listen to us and you've put your database together. Now the question is, going into 2021, what can you do with this database? What are 3 campaigns that you can send right now to communicate with your database, get back in front of them, be top of mind, and hopefully earn some repeat referral business from those people? So that's coming up next week. Got some really exciting stuff. We're going to have some scripts. It's going to be really practical. Looking forward to it. Until next time, this has been the Marketing Trench.
Yeah.